Hi, I'm Essie Cupp, and I've spent my career interviewing people about politics, presidential elections, and some really tough breaking news. But now I need a break, and I think you do too. So on my new podcast, Off the Cup, I'll still be interviewing people, usually famous and most likely my friends, but about life. You know, the stuff that consumes us when we're not consumed by politics. So come join me every Wednesday for some conversational self-care. Listen to Off the Cup on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite shows.
What's up, y'all? This is Questlove, and at QLS, I get to hang out with my friends, Sugar Steve, Laia, Fontigolo, Unpaid Bill, and we, at Questlove Supreme, like to nerd out and do deep dives with musicians and actors and politicians and creatives and people that we feel really deserve that attention. We learn, we laugh, we fall down rabbit holes. Listen to Questlove Supreme on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Suprema!
Hey, I'm Gianna Prudenti.
And I'm Jermaine Jackson Gadsden. We're the hosts of Let's Talk Offline from LinkedIn News and iHeart Podcasts.
There's a lot to figure out when you're just starting your career. That's where we come in.
Think of us as your work besties you can turn to for advice.
And if we don't know the answer, we bring in people who do, like negotiation expert Maury Taheri-Pour.
If you start thinking about negotiations as just a conversation, then I think it sort of eases us a little bit.
Listen to Let's Talk Offline on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Mental health is now talked about more than ever, which is awesome. I mean, I don't have to tell you that it's a primary focus of On Purpose. But on a day-to-day basis, many people don't know where to turn or which tools can help. Over the past couple of years, I've been working with Calm to make mental wellness accessible and enjoyable, or as I like to say, fun and easy. Calm has all sorts of content to help you reduce anxiety and stress, build mindful habits, improve sleep, and generally feel better in your daily life. So many bite-sized options from the most knowledgeable experts in the world, along with renowned meditation teachers. You can also check out my 7-minute daily series to help you live more mindfully each and every day. Right now, listeners of On Purpose get 40% off a subscription to Calm Premium at calm.com/J. That's CALM.com/JAY for 40% off. Calm your mind, change your life. And that's the interesting thing about this idea that they weren't for you. And by the way, you weren't for them either. We often think I'm the perfect person for them. They're never going to find someone like me. Sure, they're never going to find someone like you, but you weren't the person for them either.
The #1 health and wellness podcast.
Jay Shetty.
Jay Shetty.
The one, the only Jay Shetty.
Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose. Thank you so much for joining me. Whether you're on a walk, whether you're cooking, whether you're with a friend, whether you're driving, wherever you are, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for being here. And I'm guessing you tuned in because someone in your life sent this episode to you, or you saw the title and thought to yourself, I've been there. I'm there right now. I know how that feels. I'm here to remind you that they weren't the one for you, and that's okay. I speak to so many people every week who tell me that they thought they were so close to having found true love, to having found the one, to having met their partner, and for some reason, it didn't work out. Some of these people had been together for years, and they were waiting for this person to propose. And when they shared their ultimatum, the person walked away. Some of these people thought everything was on track until one day their partner turned around and said, I don't think this is working anymore. And for some people, they were engaged to be married and their person turned around and said, I'm not in love with you anymore. Now, all of these things are hard because you built up the belief that someone was meant for you. And what a lot of us don't realize is that we start believing someone is the one for us even before they agree or commit to it. How many of you have seen yourself future tripping? You meet someone and you're already thinking about your wedding day. You're thinking about having kids together. You're thinking about moving in. You're thinking at least 3 steps ahead. How many of you are feeling the pressure that the next person you meet has to be the one, must be the one, because you feel you're getting old, time's ticking? We put all these artificial pressures on ourselves, only to make ourselves believe that someone is our person. And when that person takes away that thought, that belief, that idea, we're often left broken and brokenhearted. And I'm here to remind you that they weren't the one for you, and that's okay. They didn't want to love you, and that's okay. They didn't want to show up for you, and that's okay. They didn't want to be there for you, and that's okay. Because they weren't the one for you, and you're okay. And you'll be okay because you're still here for yourself. Because a no from someone else doesn't have to feel like a rejection of your true self. Because someone walking away from you doesn't mean you have to abandon yourself as well. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges I see, is that when someone walks away from us, when someone chooses a different route, we start to follow them on their path, wondering why they left us, not realizing that we're leaving ourselves behind as well. Don't leave yourself behind following someone else who wasn't meant for you. I want to guide you through how to deal with that heartbreak, to how to reconcile this idea that someone wasn't for you when you felt that they must have been the person for you. The first thing I want to talk about is a beautiful quote from Maya Angelou. She said, "When people show you who they are, believe them." Let me say that again. Maya Angelou said, "When people show you who they are, believe them." How many of you made excuses for this person? How many of you constantly created justifications for their actions, behaviors, mindsets, attitude, communication style? I mean, I could go on and on and on. How many of you would jump on the phone to your friend and your friend would say something like, "Yeah, they were a bit off that night." And you'd be like, "Oh no, but they've got lots of stuff going on at work." Maybe even your parents said something like, "I'm not sure about this." And you were like, "No, mom, you just don't understand." Right? Maybe you had a brother or a sister who just said, "Look, I can just sense that." And you stopped them. You said, "No, I'll stop you right there. This is my person." A lot of us duped ourselves. A lot of us deceived ourselves. And yes, that person may have feel like we should do that, but they didn't deceive us. We lied to ourselves about them. Right? Let's really reconcile that for a second. So many of us lie about someone else and lie for someone else in order to protect them because we're protecting why we like them. Let's just talk about that for a second. We try and protect someone's reputation because subconsciously we're trying to protect our own. We're trying to protect the reason we like them. We're trying to protect the reason we're with them. We're trying to protect the reason we feel that way. And often what I find is that we've tried to protect a perfect image of someone else when in reality, what we experience from them is completely different. But the thing is, when you repeat that pattern, when you keep protecting this perfect image of them, you start to believe that's who they are. And so when they walk away or it doesn't work out or it doesn't pan out that way, you're left thinking, wait a minute, but they were so great. They loved me. They were amazing. But really, you were the one justifying. You were the one creating excuses. You were the one making it feel like it was going in the right direction. So how do we deal with this? Because that story and that narrative in our mind is intoxicating, right? It feels great to tell ourselves that story. We found the one, it's working out. We love them, they love us. How do we not do the opposite? A lot of us experience the opposite, where we get really cynical, right? No matter what someone does, we go, "Oh, they're not my person. Oh, no, they're not right for me. Oh, no. We self-sabotage, right? So there's two sides to this coin. One side is they're the perfect person. I'm going to protect that image. The other side is they're not my person, no matter how great it is. And both of those lead to pushing people away or people walking away. And the balanced view is, well, no, let me get a realistic view of what story they're telling me. They're showing me that sometimes they prioritize me and sometimes they prioritize work. Okay, am I good with that? They're showing me that actually they never prioritize me and they only prioritize work. Okay, let me make note of that. They're showing me that they value me when it's convenient. They're showing me that they love to show up for the physical intimacy, and when things are great, but when things are bad, they turn away. And what you did at that time was just amplify the good, focus on the positives. Now, here's the challenge, right? We're scared of becoming cynical, but then the other end is we become celebratory about all the little tiny things they do well. And we don't find that balance. That balance comes by truly taking it for what it is and observing whether we like that, whether it works for us. Number 2, they never showed up when it mattered. They weren't the one for you. And that's okay, because they never showed up when it mattered. Think about someone who, whenever it was tough, whenever it was hard, they weren't the first person you called. They weren't the first person to be there. Actually, they found a way to duck out every time, and they had good reasons for it. Now, that's not the kind of person you want to build a life with. That's not the kind of person that you want to grow with, because what you practice before commitment is what you receive after commitment, right? It doesn't really change. People think the big wedding day, the marriage changes behavior. It doesn't always. It rarely does. It continues as is. And if anything, it may even dissolve. Now, it's harder when you look back and you think, well, they always showed up when it mattered. Maybe they helped you through a really tough time in your life. Maybe they helped you through a really difficult time and you're thinking, they must be my person. They helped me through that time. Well, maybe they were just with you to help you through that time. Maybe they were just there to guide you through that difficult time, and that was their role in your life. And I know that made you believe that they must want to be around forever, that it must work out forever, but it's accepting that they actually helped you in your time of need, and that was beautiful. It's not a negative thing. It's not a horrendous thing, but they were there for you when it mattered. And you can accept that, you can receive that, and you can appreciate that as it is. Now, this third one's really interesting. They weren't the one for you, and that's okay, because they told you they'd healed, but you realized they hadn't. A lot of the time, maybe you got back with an ex, maybe things took you away, maybe you got back together, maybe this is someone that presented them in a certain way and they said, hey, I've healed, I've grown, I'm a different person now. And you thought, yes, this must be my person. They've been through a transition, they've been through a transformation, we're made for each other, it's going to work out. And they weren't the one for you because they hadn't healed. And so you built up a picture of the version of themselves that they said was healed. And you imagined a life with that version. You imagined a life with that character. And that's sadly what it was. It was a character from a movie. But in reality, they weren't there. So they weren't the one for you. That character was. That image was again. And so you start to notice how more often than not, the one that was for you was an image you built or an image they built for you. And in reality, they weren't the one for you. So what do you do with that information? You remind yourself that they weren't for you because it was a character they built, the version they told you they were. You recognize that, you sit with that, as uncomfortable as it is, to recognize that the person you wanted to be with didn't actually exist. And it frees you from that constant thought analysis of, they were the one, I know they were, they could have been that, they said it, they knew it. And this all comes back down to a realization of how we spend so much time in what if instead of what is.
Hey, I'm Gianna Prudenti.
And I'm Janae Jackson Gadsden. We're the hosts of Let's Talk Offline, a new podcast from LinkedIn News and iHeart Podcasts.
When you're just starting out in your career, you have a lot of questions, like how do I speak up when I'm feeling overwhelmed?
Or, can I negotiate a higher salary if this is my first real job? Girl, yes.
Each week, we answer your unfiltered work questions.
Think of us as your work besties you can turn to for advice.
And if we don't know the answer, we bring in experts who do, like resume specialist Morgan Sanner.
The only difference between the person who doesn't get the job and the person who gets the job is usually who applies.
Yeah, I think a lot about that quote. What is it? Like, you miss 100% of the shots you never take.
Yeah, rejection is scary, but it's better than you rejecting yourself.
Together, we'll share what it really takes to thrive in the early years of your career
without sacrificing your sanity or sleep.
Listen to Let's Talk Offline on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What's up, y'all? This is Questlove, and at QLS, I get to hang out with my friends, Sugar Steve, Laia, Fontigolo, Unpaid Bill, and we, at Questlove Supreme, like to nerd out and do deep dives with musicians and actors and politicians and journalists.
We give you the stories behind all your favorite artists and creatives that you have never heard. I'm talking about stories behind their life journeys and their works of art.
I love QLS because of the QLS Team Supreme. They're like a second family to me.
If you're a fan of deep diving into music, everything, almanacking your musical history, and learning things about hip-hop artists and things you never thought, then you're a lot like me. But you're also a fan of Questlove Supreme.
One of the things I love the most about this show is that we get to learn from the masters. I look at being on this show as my graduate program in music.
Listen to Questlove Supreme on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Suprema!
Hi, I'm Essie Cupp, and I've spent the last 20 plus years knee-deep in politics and the news. I've covered some really tough subjects, from war to genocide to 6 presidential elections, way too much Trump. And you know what? I need a break, like a mental health break from the news, from the triggering headlines. And I kind of suspect some of you listening out there might need a break too. So my new podcast is going to be just that, a fun and loose space where I talk to my famous friends and people I admire about all the stuff that consumes us when we're not consumed by politics.
I did not really rebel in the 60s. I had no sex in the 70s.
What?
I made no money in the 80s. So when true crime came along, I missed that trend too.
So many great guests are joining me, from Josh Mankiewicz to Larry Wilmore to Molly Jong Fast to Josh Gad.
I'm so excited that you have this platform, and I am just hoping that I don't destroy the platform in its earliest stages.
Listen to Off the Cuff on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite shows.
Number 4, they weren't the one for you because they kept saying, we can't do this, when actually what they meant is they couldn't. A lot of people will say, look, I don't think this is good for us anymore. I don't think we're right for each other. I don't think we're willing to do what it takes. I don't think we have what it takes to last. They're speaking on your behalf. If you've ever had a partner who's spoken on your behalf or used the word we to summarize their feelings, used the word us to summarize their emotions, they weren't the one for you. Because what they're saying is, I'm scared of acknowledging. I don't have the courage to actually express how I feel, so I'm going to make it about both of us. I don't have the guts to take accountability and responsibility for how I'm feeling, and therefore I'm going to make it our feeling. And guess what? You'd read that and you'd even think at one point, yeah, maybe I'm not cut out for this. You know what? Maybe they're right. And maybe you even reflected on yourself and thought, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm the reason they feel this way. And we have to do that reflection. It can be us. There is a middle ground. There is a spot in between where we have to recognize that we have to take accountability. We have to recognize where we've contributed to this. But I think the mistake becomes when they're getting to choose our emotions about the relationships rather than us getting to share what they are. The reason why this one's really interesting is because their language, when you reflect on it, will show you what frequency they work on. So if your frequency is, hey, we can solve this. Hey, we can do this. Hey, let's take responsibility. Hey, let's figure it out. That's a high vibration frequency. If their frequency is, we can't do this, it's never going to work out, that's a low frequency. Now, if your frequency is, hey, you need to change, you need to figure it out, that's also a low level frequency. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about the 4 types of frequency. The fourth and lowest type of frequency is fear and insecurity. It's where we're either scared of commitment or we like to make the other person feel scared, or we exercise manipulation and control. Better than that is the frequency of passion, where we may want something for someone else. We may demand things. Again, not good for the long term, but better than the first one. Above that is the frequency of duty, responsibility, accountability. And above that is the frequency of love and joy and connection. And often what I find in this is that we want to jump from the passionate love to the love. We want to jump from here's who I want you to be to can we just be madly in love? And the most important step is the mode of goodness, the frequency of goodness, which is about responsibility and accountability. I find that actually those two are probably the most under talked about values in a healthy relationship. Can each of us be accountable for our own emotions, our own actions and feelings? And can we take responsibility for how they affect the other person? Can we take responsibility for re-energizing, rejuvenating this relationship? Accountability and responsibility are things that they didn't have or you didn't have for them. And that's the interesting thing about this idea that they weren't for you. And by the way, you weren't for them either. We often think I'm the perfect person for them. They're never going to find someone like me. Sure, they're never going to find someone like you, but you weren't the person for them either. Step number 5, you were chasing them the whole time. You'd made up this story in your head that they were better than you, that they were the catch, that they were the one that all your friends and family would approve of. And throughout the time you were with them, and even before you got them, you were chasing them. And even when you were with them, you were chasing them. And often we chase someone before we're with them. We chase someone when we're with them. And then eventually we chase them away. We're running behind someone for so long that they don't know what else to do but run away. We're running after someone for so long that they continue to run away. And the reason I'm raising that is because if you feel like you're constantly chasing someone, they're not for you. And so often we feel like, yes, I got them. Yes, like I'm just making it perfect. Yeah, they get it now. Like, oh, I feel a bit safer now. And it's like, no, your person will be peaceful. Your person, you'll feel safe and they'll feel safe. You won't feel like you're constantly chasing them, only to chase them away. And I feel so many of us do that. We constantly feel, oh, they're out of my league. Oh, they're better than me. I better do everything to hold on to them. If you're feeling that way, they weren't for you. They're not for you. And that's okay because you've realized, well, I shouldn't be feeling anxious and nervous and on edge and in a lower frequency of fear and insecurity if they're my person. Do I feel peaceful around them? Do I feel stable around them? Do I feel supported around them? Do I like how I feel when I'm around them? If they're making us insecure, fearful, anxious, or if that's who we are and we're not healing that, because often I find that people take their anxious skew into a relationship and reflect it even on someone stable. But hey, if I was triggered that way and I wasn't working on it, they weren't for me either because I've got to heal. We have to reflect on where we need to heal. As much as we keep saying they're not for us, we're not for them either. Number 6, they made you feel that they were aloof. If people always seem detached, aloof, not committed, not connected, they weren't for you, and that's okay. Because if someone's already detached, that detachment's only going to get stronger. There's a couple more things I want to share with you. You were more scared of being alone